Hello and welcome. Today we're jumping headfirst into one of the most intense and honestly unsettling prophecies in the Bible, Ezekiel chapter 7. This isn't some far-off, maybe it'll happen warning. No, this is a live broadcast, a declaration that the final countdown for the nation of Judah has already begun. Wow, what an opening line. The chapter just kicks the door in with this chilling, absolute statement from God. There's no ambiguity here, right? The message in verse 2 is as clear as it gets. The time for warnings is over. Judgment isn't just on its way, it's here.
So, to really get our heads around the sheer weight of this chapter, we're going to walk through it in 5 parts. First, we'll look at that initial declaration of the end. Then, we'll dig into this really critical choice between redemption and what the Bible calls recompense. From there, we'll step right into the day of trouble, see how it triggers a total societal collapse, and finally, we'll uncover the ultimate reason behind all this devastation.
Okay, so let's get into it. These first few verses make it painfully clear any thought of delay is off the table. Judgment has arrived.
And listen to the specific language God uses here. This isn't some random, impersonal force. It's deeply personal. Verse 3 says, God will judge thee according to thy ways. And that word, recompense, is so important. It basically means payback. Their own actions, their abominations, are literally becoming the very basis for their judgment.
And this brings us right to the heart of the whole chapter, really. It's all about a critical choice. This isn't just about Judah either. It's a theme you see again and again. It's about 2 possible paths that lead to 2 very, very different places.
So it begs a fundamental question, right? When a person or even a whole nation goes completely off the rails, what happens next? Well, according to this text, there are 2 and only 2 possible outcomes. On the one hand, you've got redemption. This is God's mercy in action. It's deliverance, it's forgiveness, it's hope. This is the path God wants for people. But if that path is rejected, there's the other option, recompense. This is God's justice. It's the direct, unavoidable consequence of refusing to turn back. And its outcome is exactly what you'd expect: judgment, captivity, and death.
So, what's the bottom line? Judah had a choice. They absolutely could have turned back, but they didn't. They chose to keep going down the path of sin. And because they slammed the door on redemption, there was only one path left open: recompense. The rest of this chapter is a terrifyingly detailed description of exactly what that looks like.
So, what does recompense actually look like on the ground? Well, verses 5 through 13 paint a pretty grim picture. God calls it an only evil, meaning this is a unique, one-of-a-kind judgment. The morning of their doom has dawned, and the day of trouble is here.
In verse 10, Ezekiel uses this really vivid metaphor from farming. He says, "The rod hath blossomed, pride hath budded." Think about that. Israel's sin, their pride, their violence, it wasn't just a weed. It was a plant they'd been cultivating for a long time, and now it had finally reached full bloom. And what happens after a flower hits its absolute peak? It withers and dies. Their season of sin is over. Destruction is the harvest.
And the consequences are so all-consuming that they make normal life completely meaningless. Verse 12 says buyers won't be happy about a good deal, and sellers won't be upset about a loss. Why? Because what's the point? When the wrath of God is coming down on everyone, who cares about the price of goods? The entire fabric of society just dissolves.
And when daily life dissolves, what's left is just total chaos, a complete societal collapse. Verses 14 through 18 give us a front-row seat to the sheer terror and paralysis of the coming siege. This verse right here is just incredible. Picture it. The alarm is sounded, the trumpet for battle is blown, and nobody moves. No one goes to fight. Why? Because God's wrath has completely hollowed them out. It has drained every last ounce of courage and strength. Their army crumbles before a single sword is even swung. And there is absolutely no escape. Verse 15 lays out this terrifying 2-front war. If you're outside the city walls, you're going to die by the Babylonian sword. If you run inside the city for safety, you'll just be consumed by starvation and disease. There's literally nowhere to hide.
And this is the end result. It's not just that they lose the battle, it's a complete physical and psychological meltdown. The imagery in verse 17 is so potent. Hands feeble, knees weak as water. It's a kind of bone-deep paralysis, a direct effect of facing divine judgment, and it leaves everyone utterly helpless.
So now we get to the climax of the chapter.
Verses 19 through 27 pull back the curtain on the final consequences and, most importantly, the ultimate reason why this is all happening.
As their whole world is caving in, what's left to trust in? What about all their wealth? Surely their silver and gold can save them, right? And the answer, right there in verse 19, is a hard no. All the riches they'd piled up are suddenly completely useless. In the day of God's wrath, their money is just metal. It can't buy food, it can't buy safety, and it sure can't buy them out of this judgment.
And here's the real gut punch, the profound irony of it all. The very things they trusted in, their silver and gold, are now called the stumbling block of their iniquity. Their most treasured assets become exhibits A, B, and C in the case against them, a monument to everything they worshipped instead of God.
And it's not just their money that fails. Every single institution of their society collapses. The prophets, they have no vision from God. The priests, the law is gone. The elders, the wise counselors, they have nothing to offer. The prince is frozen in despair, and the king is just left to mourn. Every single source of guidance and authority goes silent.
So why? Why this total, systematic, top-to-bottom dismantling of an entire nation? It all funnels down to one final, critical purpose.
And there it is, the last line of the chapter from verse 27. Through all this horror, losing their land, their wealth, their leaders, even their temple, they are stripped of every false security they ever had. And when there's nothing left to lean on, only one truth remains. The entire point of this catastrophe is divine recognition. They will finally know who the Lord is.
And that's why this chapter isn't just some dusty piece of ancient history. It's a blueprint. It reveals a timeless pattern. A nation becomes ripe for destruction when its sin hits a saturation point. When you see unchecked pride and arrogance, when violence is common, when warnings are just laughed off, when the most vulnerable are oppressed, and when there's a stubborn, repeated refusal to change course, you're looking at the same signs. Which leaves all of us with a pretty sobering question to chew on, doesn't it? Ezekiel 7 isn't just a story about them back then. It's a mirror, and it forces us to look at our own world, our own societies, and ask, do we see any of those same warning signs today? It's a question worth taking seriously.